On Sunday, November 10th, 1918, in this German military hospital in Passbach, northeast of Berlin, a pastor entered with an important message for the injured soldiers. The Kaiser, Wilhelm II, had abdicated the throne and fled to Holland. Germany would sign an armistice with France the next day. They had lost the Great War. An Austrian soldier, Adolf Hitler, who had been temporarily blinded at the Battle of Ypres, recalled his reaction to the news. Everything went black before my eyes. I tottered and groped my way back to the ward, threw myself on my bunk, and dug my burning head into my blanket and pillow. So it had all been in vain. In vain all the sacrifices and privations. In vain the hours in which, with mortal fear clutching at our hearts, we nevertheless did our duty. In vain the death of 2 millions that died. Had they died for this? Did all this happen only so that a gang of wretched criminals could lay their hands on the fatherland? It became a defining moment for the 29-year-old soldier and for Germany. Before the war, Hitler had been living the life of a tramp in Vienna, the capital of the Austrian Empire. The empire was a mixture of nationalities, languages, and religions. He encountered all of them in Vienna, one of Europe's great cities. Being around people of so many different ethnic groups, he probably would have been extra conscious of his Germanness, way more conscious of it than he would have been in his much smaller hometown of Linz. The mayor of Vienna at this time was a man named Karl Lueger, founder of the Austrian Christian Social Party. He was very popular in Vienna at the time Hitler was living there. Lueger was what we would call a right-wing politician. Right-wingers, what we might call conservatives, tend to be nationalistic. Our nation is the best, and traditional, good old-fashioned religious values. People on the extreme right, like Lueger, can also be xenophobic. Those immigrants are ruining the country, or just plain old racist. It's the Jews' fault. Lueger was all of these things. Later in life, Hitler cited him as an inspiration of sorts. Bigotry against Jews is called anti-Semitism, and anti-Semitism helped politicians like Lueger gain popularity in the early 1900s in Vienna. But why? Well, as we've said, Lueger was a right-wing politician, meaning he was the opposite of left-wing. Left-wingers tend to support social welfare policies. We should build more schools and accept people of other cultures. Hey, it's cool, man. We're all human. Extreme left-wingers could be socialist. Workers should own the businesses. Or communist. Abolish government and private property, man. Extreme left-wingers and extreme right-wingers could also be populist, meaning they appeal to the common people. Left-wingers can be populist by promising to provide for the people or empower workers. Extreme right-wingers could be populist by promising to make the country strong, or by favoring the majority ethnic group over everyone else. Left-wingers usually use some sort of material analysis to communicate their points. You're poor because we have a system that allows the wealthy to profit from your hard work. Leftists might call this dialectical or historical materialism, terms borrowed from Karl Marx, the OPOG of the left. Right-wingers usually personalize their points. You're poor because the Jews are manipulating everything for their benefit. This is why leftists sometimes call anti-Semitism the socialism of fools. Instead of directing people's anger towards an unfair system that exploits them, it misdirects their anger towards other exploited and more vulnerable people. All types of racism and xenophobia serve this purpose too. Hitler supposedly learned from Lueger how to use anti-Semitism to gain political power. Later in life, Hitler claimed he saw 2 major flaws in Lueger. 1, his anti-Semitism was fake. Behind the scenes, he had Jewish friends. As mayor, he tended to treat Jews as fairly as anyone else. And 2, he wasn't a great speaker. He wasn't able to convince people to join his cause. Hitler vowed he would not make those mistakes if he ever joined politics. But before he got into politics, he got into war. World War I broke out in 1914, and Austria was right in the middle of it. Rather than serve in Austria's army, alongside soldiers of different races and languages, he slipped over the border to join Germany's army to serve with his fellow Germans on the Western Front. Hitler's critics sometimes accuse him of being a coward during the war, but there isn't any proof of this. There's no doubt he was temporarily blinded, which is why he was in that military hospital on that fateful November day. Hitler's reaction to Germany's surrender was similar to many German soldiers. They couldn't understand it. The German army didn't lose. They hadn't been surrounded or routed. Their capital hadn't been captured. Sure, they didn't win, but the war wasn't lost. What happened? In short, Germany's generals thought they were cooked. Their allies, Austria and the Ottoman Empire, had collapsed. The United States was pouring millions of fresh troops into Europe to fight them. And most importantly, the German people were starving and revolution was in the air. The army and the country was collapsing. So much so that Kaiser Wilhelm II got the hell out of there. And what kind of government was going to take his place? As it stood now, a republic, a representative democracy. But the leftists, socialists, were knocking at the door. They saw their chance to usher in a socialist revolution, like Russia did the year before. Germany's future was up in the air, but Germany's past was not. They could have a prince, a king, a Holy Roman Emperor, or a president. At the end of the day, only one group held the power there, the army. Before Germany, there was Prussia, a kingdom run by the Hohenzollern dynasty, Kaiser Wilhelm's dynasty. Prussia dedicated its resources to maintaining a strong military. As one Prussian military man said, Prussia isn't a country with an army, Prussia is an army with a country. It was the army that decided to surrender in World War I. It was losing the support of the army that led Kaiser Wilhelm to give up his throne. It was the army that chose Germany's democratic government, in hopes it would make the American president, Woodrow Wilson, more inclined to go easy on them after the war. Probably most importantly, it was the army that would tell the German people, hey, we didn't surrender, the new government did. Probably the biggest reason the army wanted a new government was so they could blame it for their loss in the war. See, we didn't lose the war, we were sold out by those November criminals who surrendered in November 1918. Hitler would mention the November criminals for the rest of his life.